lot of the problems we run into theologically and then that end up directly affecting our life in Christ come from not giving the wrong answers per se, but from asking the wrong questions. And I think we've seen tonight how a lot of discussions of atonement are based on reading backwards. So you start with a developed theological idea, read it back into the New Testament, and then from there back into the Old Testament, instead of what we hopefully did with reasonable success tonight, which is start in the Old Testament and read forward and see how things unfold. But also that there's a fundamental question that gets asked in the West, and it comes under the banner of atonement, despite the fact that there's not a whiff of it in what we've seen in our survey tonight. And that's not just how does salvation work, but how does salvation work from God's end? It's not a question of how does salvation work in the sense of what must I do to be saved, which is a salutary question. But it is how does it work from God's end? How does God see it working? How does God make it happen? And a very well-known biblical scholar, and a very good biblical scholar, Simon Gathercole, who wrote the magisterial material on the Gospel of Thomas, for example, amongst many other great things, did a book a few years ago on atonement, trying to defend the particular quote-unquote atonement theory of penal substitutionary atonement. You get these atonement theories that are then theories of how it works from God's end, how God does it. And he argued, one of his most prominent arguments that he repeated again and again, was that penal substitutionary atonement is the only theory of how it works that has a mechanism for how it works. That's his word. The idea, there's a presupposition there that it's somehow mechanical, that God saving us is like an elaborate Rube Goldberg machine in an OK Go video or something, where he puts things in motion and at the end somebody gets saved. And not only is that a bizarre assumption that there's no reason to believe is true, even if it were true, there's no reason to believe that we as humans could understand how it works from God's side. But the dangerous thing is, again, not just being wrong, but how this affects our life in Christ. I am the biggest nerd anyone will ever meet. I am an omni-nerd. I can describe to you the inner workings of countless fictional universes, right? I can tell you all about Arrakis, the desert planet. I can tell you all about Gallifrey. I can tell you all about Nimbus 5, the planet of galactic peace. I can understand all that, and that's fun. Figuring out all the details, the systems, all the lore, this kind of thing is fun. And it can become very easy when exposed to theology, especially theology of this kind that's trying to explain how everything works and everything fits together and see things from God's perspective, to approach our Christian life from that perspective, that it's about me figuring things out. It's about me piecing things together. It's about this sort of intellectual construct that I want to form in my mind where I have the perfect theology and I understand everything. Strictly speaking, that's not Christianity, it's Gnosticism. The reality is more like what we were talking about tonight that we see unfold in the scriptures with atonement and everything else. That there are these cosmic realities of spiritual warfare, of Christ defeating the powers of evil, of Christ setting us free and purifying us, making us holy and setting us apart and bringing us into his kingdom, that are cosmic realities that each of us has been given the gift of being able to participate in time. From moment to moment, day to day, we come to experience these realities ever more fully. We experience them in worship. We experience them in our interactions with other people when we show the love of God to them. We experience them in the peace we receive from God, in the actual forgiveness and healing we receive for our actual sins on a day-to-day basis. This isn't just an intellectual maneuver. This is something we can experience and participate in real time. And that's what Lent and Holy Week and Pascha are going to be all about. So it's not about me and Father Andrew or the Orthodox Church or anyone else coming and just bashing on Western churches and saying, ha, you guys are all wrong. You guys are all asking the wrong questions. It's about the reality of when the rubber meets the road and how each of us approaches our Christian life. What we want is not just to understand salvation, but to experience salvation. And understanding the cosmic realities and how we come to participate them ritually and every other way is the way that experience becomes real to us. So I think that's hopefully the important takeaway beyond all the fun stuff and interesting Bible tidbits. That this isn't just about knowing the right interpretation, thinking the right thing, but it's about experiencing the reality of Christ.